You're on.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome. This is a regularly scheduled city council workshop. Today is Monday, October 28th. And it is 6:04 PM. Around the table, we have Councilor Leonard, Councilor Tremble, Councilor Yakbaga, myself, Council Chair Pelletier, Councilor Schaefer, Councilor Dean, Councilor Fournier, and Councilor Fish. Councilor Hawes is either currently on or will be joining us via Zoom. We'll give her a moment to join
Yeah,
us.
she's almost there. Look at her.
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome back, Councilor Hawes. We're also joined at the table by City Manager Debbie Laurie and Jenna Jones, who is our homeless response manager. The first item up on the agenda is the encampment closure update.
Thank you so much. Great to see you all this evening. Since the announcement of the encampment closure, almost a week ago, I believe 2 weeks ago, there has been significant outreach from partners, particularly in homeless services and sort of tertiary services in our community expressing deep concern. I think this is an incredibly positive first step. One of the things that we did sort of in tandem with the closure announcement was to really activate our network of partners. We understand that the successful implementation of an encampment closure cannot be done in a vacuum. We must have deep and committed engagement from our community partners in order for this to be a positive move for people who really need the next right opportunity. That partner call took place last Wednesday via Zoom. It was a hybrid meeting where a group of us met at Public Health. And after inviting 25 different groups to our proverbial and literal table, including all of the homeless shelters, Partners for Peace, Dignity First, Hope for Homeless, HEAL and the Heart Center, UMA's Unhoused Action Committee, our Hub 7 coordinator, the Office of Behavioral Health, Penobscot County Cares, Needle Point Sanctuary, the Brick Church, Preble Street, Design Wall Housing, outreach teams, our warming centers, including VA Homeless Outreach as well, who's recently started working with us in that space. Fresh Start Sober Living, Conquest Housing Navigation, Options, PCHC's mobile health team, Northern Light Acadia Hospital Case Management's team, CHCS's crisis team, and the Bangor Public Library. We had 55 partners turn out on Zoom, including 7, my apologies, the memo that I submitted says 6. There were actually 7 encampment residents present with us that day as well to discuss what this closure might mean, but what it also could mean for Bangor. In terms of this being a building block of sorts to better community integration and service deployment to ensure that folks who are unhoused in our committees in our community have the ability to connect to their next right step as efficiently and effectively as possible. We heard a lot from unhoused residents of the encampment in that space who offered a lot of feedback, a lot of perspectives on things that we need to be considering in order for this process to be humane and ultimately effectual. That meeting was followed up by a meeting that we held in the encampment the following day to bring this information to encampment residents, whereby we were able to facilitate a group of providers who routinely work in that space to join myself and our public health director to essentially answer their questions, to set expectations, and to clear up a lot of the confusion and the concern that people are feeling regarding this closure. That's not to say that everybody is, right on board agreeing that this is the right move for folks. But as we continue to have our discussions with partners and with encampment residents, we continue to be transparent in the process and we try to be really good collaborators on a process that will hopefully bring about positive outcomes for the folks currently living in that space. Common themes that emerged from that discussion include a lot of concern about what this actually means for the work that's currently being done in that space. A lot of concern from the residents about how am I going to ensure that I can still reach my outreach worker or my case manager or, the health team that comes out to see me to make sure that, I can get checked out for things that are bothering me. We were able to lay, I hope, a lot of that concern to rest, whereby we attempted to convey that we are deeply committed to ensuring that this process moves forward, prioritizing the relationships that those workers have built with encampment residents. Anytime you cause this much upheaval to a group that already exists in a state of crisis, if you will, a lot of good work can be undone. It's incredibly important that we move forward ensuring that those relationships are protected. And we're talking with our partners, with the folks who are actually providing direct service on the ground to figure out how we can ensure that those relationships are protected while we still make forward progress to close that space. We are working on finalizing some of our resource allocations, getting a really solid understanding of what the warming centers are going to be able to do, talking about the housing options that we are working to put together so that ultimately we prioritize those relationships. And then from a partner standpoint, we are able to step in and say, okay, this is the next right move for this individual. This is the next right move for this individual. This is the next right move for this individual. For some of those folks, it's going to look like housing, right? And we're already doing a lot of that work. We're working on identifying new relationships with property holders. We're working on identifying new opportunities to uncover some new units that are going to be coming on board as well. Some exciting opportunities for folks to be sure, but we're also considering that for folks, the next right step might be shelter. It might be a warming center where you can get comfortable and have a roof over your head and have the ability to make decisions about what the next 3 weeks might look like when all you've really been able to consider in an encampment environment is what do the next 30 minutes or 3 hours look like in some cases. For some folks, it might look like we support their sobriety journey. So we are fostering connections to detox centers and sober living facilities. For some folks, it might look like reunification with family members or their support systems that they have lost. For some folks, it might look like diversion. Maybe Bangor isn't the right place for you anymore. If you have a safe place to go that's away from here, let's help you identify where that is and what might be right for you. This is not a cookie cutter process, right? Each individual in non-encampment is different with unique needs and barriers and challenges and desires. But if we can really protect the relationships and the good and incredible work that's being done on the ground by our outreach workers and case managers and the folks who are engaging in that direct service, then I really feel like that we can execute a plan that creates as many positive opportunities for folks as possible. Going forward, we are working on identifying what the focus groups for this work will look like. I'm currently working to get all of my ducks in a row, but I'm really hoping to be able to hand off some parts of this for folks that want to continue to engage with us. We've almost finalized our housing group. So that's a special group that's just going to work on exploring housing opportunities for folks. We will be working on setting up some programs that will help individuals in the encampment space feel connected to the community that they already have in that environment, the support systems that they've been leaning on for years, months, however long they've been there. There's a significant amount of concern that those support networks are going to go away secondary to this encampment closure. And what we need to do is to ensure that people feel as positive about these next opportunities as possible. And part of that work is ensuring that those safety nets are not only transitioned, but that we're delivering tools for folks so that they can start weaving their own safety nets that are hopefully much more robust than you might be able to find in an encampment space. So we're looking at some programs that our partners are going to help us stand up as well to essentially create some of those connections to help folks feel more stable and supported in this transition as well. Any questions?
Counselor Fish.
Thank you for that report. It's amazing that, there's over 25 partners that showed up and other outreach service providers. And the fact that you're thinking about a focus group, so that perhaps as we start to close this encampment, that we can better, for the city of Bangor and for the encampment residents, have a better handle and participate, be more involved as a city as to what's going on there, compassionately, but also to know, I ask it over and over and over again, and I warn you, I'm going to continue to ask. Who are they and where are they coming from? Because the fallout of it falls on the backs of, our first response people, our police, our fire, our medics. And, for this vulnerable group, it's not that we're not compassionate, but for my year on council, the hours and the resources and the money, the ARPA funds, the attention, the time, we have 33,000 residents. And we just have to figure out how to get a better handle on this. And a lot of them have mental health and physical and, and a lot of, substance abuse issues. But at the same time, I think the simple question of who are they and where are they from is not an unreasonable question. When the follow of it falls on the backs of the Bangor residents and the hospitals community. And, even our sister communities, I understand that we are a county seat and we provide more services, but at the same time, how much resources are we putting out in time? Are we putting out, when we have 33,000 other residents? So we have to be compassionate, but at the same time, I think this has been a runaway train. So I'm very glad to hear your report and that you're going to have a task force and that, I don't know that we'll ever have a cure for homelessness. I wish we did, but I'm not optimistic we will. But this is at least promising to me. And I still feel we do know who they are and where they're from. And I don't know why that information isn't been released, but at least now, maybe with this focus, we'll have a better idea.
Certainly.
And, I'm not opposed to even our sister communities that don't have the resources, that we might be more open-minded. But I just think we got to get a better handle on it. So thank you for your work in this report. And just be prepared. I'll continue to ask.
I will be sure to expect them.
Thank you.
Of course.
Counselor Dean.
So I'm encouraged that so many outreach have come forward. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
But I am interested too, what is the mindset of the 7 individuals from the encampment that showed up? How are they feeling about this? Is
That's-
it one collective mindset or do they all have different opinions?
It's a very good question. They certainly have different opinions and different perspectives. There are certainly individual barriers and challenges that one might experience in terms of being able to engage with the services that are available, a willingness, etc. And being able to have a meaningful connection to feel comfortable and safe doing so is certainly part of it. I've heard sort of the spectrum, if you will. I've heard residents come forward and say, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go? You're just pushing us to another part in the city, which is a valid concern. I've also heard residents say, it's really bad out here. It's never been this bad in the entire 4 years that I've lived here. It's really dangerous. I've heard of individuals who are really reluctant to come forward and share information about some of the violence that's being perpetrated against others in that space for fear of retribution, and who feel that there must be a safer, better opportunity for folks. And I think that just kind of underscores the uniqueness of the human condition in that space particularly, and where folks are at in terms of, are we ready to break this cycle or are we still entrenched?
Other comments or questions from council?
I just have some additional information if there's no other.
Sure, thank you.
Sure. So I did sit through the partner meeting as well, and it was really great to have so many people. There were in total, I think there were 70 participants, both in person and virtually, and representing a myriad of agencies. And the fact that the city council and the city has made this a priority, I think said something and brought them all together, which was a great first step. I also believe that we're gonna continue to pivot through this. We believe we've identified ways to solve some common barriers. So for example, people have a number of items. All right, well, we've worked to find a way to help store those items for them so that people know that their items are safe. We've worked with some folks to make sure, if it's clothing and things like that, that we can get it cleaned and packed and stored for them appropriately. We think we think we may have a potential opportunity to look at for partners. Sometimes partners can't stay together depending on where they are, so we're working that piece out, as well as individuals who have pets. We have, I think, at this point, we are in the process of moving about, is it 4 or 6 individuals
Mhm.
into housing right now.
Mhm.
So the work is happening. I know of at least one that went into detox.
Mhm.
We had one earlier that had gone into detox that would help facilitate to getting into sober living. So while we haven't come back with numbers, that will be next.
Mhm.
I did want you to know that it's not just meeting and having conversations. We are going to be putting up signage later this week that clearly states, even though we've met with the residents, we've distributed information. We are going to be putting up signage that indicates that this area will be closed effective December 31st. All of this does is it also provides numbers, so that if somebody needs outreach services, if somebody needs general assistance help, if somebody needs a triage line, so the phone numbers will be included in there. We also worked with Bangor Water District, because this is the time of year where hydrants are flushed and, actually drained. Because hydrants are drained in the wintertime because otherwise they will freeze, and freeze thaw cycle on those are not good. So the water district did leave the water line running. And they said they would extend it as long as they can, and that is coming to an end on Friday. So Friday the 1st, there'll be signage put in place in and around that water source, tomorrow, just to make, residents aware of that. So, Jen's done a good job trying to herd a bunch of folks, but the good news is that of the 25 different agencies, everybody's willing to do something. And if every agency does something, it will make a difference. I also think that when we get through this process, it will give us a nice roadmap moving forward. Because those relationships will have been built, and hopefully at least the homeless response system in this city will be a little bit more cohesive than it is in the state of Maine. And to your point, it's an opportunity to create boundaries and to help educate others. So, yep.
You said signage is going up, about the
Yes.
closure on the 31st.
Yes.
So I come to Bangor, I'm homeless, I
Yeah.
show up there tomorrow, and am I
Yeah.
gonna be told this is closing down, you can't be here? Am I okay till the 31st?
So.
What about we know
What-
who's out there, so
right.
new people coming in.
So the problem with new people coming in is it takes away from the resources
Right.
that we're trying to invest in the individuals to move them along. So if
Exactly.
you come along new, you likely are not gonna get the same attention.
But are they gonna be able to?
They can stay there, but it'll be with the understanding that this is going. And lots of times, actually, diverting somebody who is new is easier than someone who's become entrenched. Because at that point, we can say, here's your options. And they tend to have a few more options available, at least realize they have a few more options available to them at that point.
Other discussion? Council House.
Thank you. City Manager Lori, you talked about all of the additional partners that were at this meeting. And that seems to be quite an increase over what has happened in the past as far as attendance. Now, if they're all willing to help, are we seeing that there's gonna be a wide variety of some new resources as well as some of the ones we currently have that might make even a better, easier transition for some of these residents?
You know, I think this is sort of the first push to sort of, I think the announcement of the closure really impacted those to say, okay, well, now people are coming, what can I do? I think it was harder to ask a number of other agencies to participate when we're out there every day with no sort of end in sight. So, and each partner brings something different, for example. So there were partners on there who were behavioral health people. All right, so how's the niche that we can find for you as behavioral health professionals to help this effort? I have interest in doing housing. All right, well, let's get the 3 or 4 housing people together so that you can say, we can say to them, find us 5 units. Okay. If I can get 5 people to find us 5 units, then we can go on to the next. So everybody brought sort of a little bit different. We're gonna have to leverage our relationships. For example, the warming centers were concerned because they will say in the dead of winter, they will be at capacity, and how can we possibly, add more? Well, part of it is, okay, we know that doesn't happen for a little while. So how can we start getting more people inside, starting to get the programming and services into the warming centers, so that we can move people through. So it's a little bit of everything, but I think the date and everybody came together and said, I can do this, or this is what's coming my way. And if everybody can take a few pieces of the puzzle, I think it's gonna help us move forward.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the update.
And we'll probably do, next Monday, we do limit sort of committee meetings. Kind of in flux, because we have sort of a lame duck council at that point.
Right.
But it's probably, we'll try to do an update, maybe Monday, we'll do a quick gov ops. Sorry, Courtney. Just thinking of it while I'm sitting here, and kind of do an update on the work that's happened this week, so that you're always aware of what's going on.
Okay, next on the agenda, council year in review.
Yes. So I have to admit, of all of the data points that we pulled together, this is probably one of my favorites. I hope it's one of yours. We spend a whole year working through committees, through council meetings, and we're always moving on to the next thing. We haven't got this, but what did we do? We need to do this next. We haven't done this. So taking a moment to step back and look at all of the things that did happen over this past year, I hope provides you some energy and we did do a lot, and it's not always not what we're doing. So for the last couple of years, what we do is we've been highlighting by priority area. This year, by designating housing as our sole priority, I think we were able to make a lot more movement on this one priority. So kind of listed everything that has happened. So for those at home, I know everybody here can likely read, but I just want to share, we've implemented the short-term rental ordinance, and you had an update on that status last week from the committee. We've hired a housing officer. We've emphasized enforcement of vacant property registry, and I know the city solicitor provided an update on that within the last couple of weeks. We've incentivized housing development on Grandview, and that's coming to fruition because that recommendation came through BNAD last week. We've got the completed draft of the Bangor housing study, so that should be finalized by the end of the year. You've reviewed your draft pre-approved building plans. They did have some feedback from Historic Preservation Commission and Planning Board, so they're going to making some tweaks and coming back. We adopted a rental registry quality housing program. We have further reduced accessory dwelling unit restrictions. We created co-living dormitory housing as a housing category. Reduced some residential off-street parking minimums. increased height allowances to facilitate additional floors and stories in housing. We expanded allowances for manufactured homes. We expanded permanent supportive housing zoning. We reduced restrictions for certain land development permit processes. And we made additional allowances for residential legal nonconformities. And that's just the legislative action y'all took. In total, we have applied for $9.9 million worth of grants in support of housing in one form or another. We have expended or allocated $5.1 million in federal funds to support housing, both in CDBG and ARPA. You've all voted on 6 residential zone changes. Right now, we have 321 units of approved housing that are pending completion. This year, the planning board approved 178 units of housing. We completed 72 units of housing. Placarded properties dropped by 16, vacant properties dropped by 8. But on the flip side, we've got 48 of the 60 vacant properties actually registered now. So to me, those are all big wins. I don't know if you want me to, kind of the things that are still in process. And I put the in process things as we move into the next council year and look at priority setting and goal setting again, is recognize we have a lot of work still on the hopper that's in progress. Obviously finalizing the housing plan. The enforcement action is coming up shortly for non-compliant vacant registry parcels. We're gonna have some enhanced compliance opportunities with our short-term rentals, as you've heard. And we're gonna complete our Grandview Avenue housing project and finalize our pre-approved building plans.
Let's pause here. Comments, questions?
I say this every year, and I don't think we started this until a few years ago, but I think that this whole process is so valuable because as a counselor for 6 years can be very frustrating, and I've had people say, "Oh, you haven't done anything." And it's so nice to tell them, we've done so much, and no, we haven't put a 10-unit, middle income housing project in front of your driveway for you to see every day, but so much is happening. And I think that this is valuable. I also think that this should be something that gets shared out with, through our social media channels as just, hey, here's what the council year did, by the way, and all those boring meetings that you don't watch. So that's just important.
I will share with you that that's the conversation we had at the comms meeting this morning is tomorrow, when you have an opportunity to talk about this, is that we're gonna push out look at what happens. And I think Councilor Schaefer, you've always done a good job, especially as the items come before council, talking about all of the changes that are being implemented that will foster growth and development in the future. And it's a process, and you all have made, the largest effort to invest in ensuring that this growth happens in the future. And it's unfortunate that some of you will still be on the council, some of you won't, that you won't get to see it come to fruition, but you all planted the seeds and somebody had to. So I think you planted a lot of seeds.
I'll absolutely be watching it come to fruition. It might not be from this table, but for sure I'll be watching it sprout up.
We'll be happy to see you at public comment. All right, next section, thank you.
Yeah. So after we kind of talk a little bit about our priority, I just wanted to talk about the services provided and the initiatives that happen across, virtually all of our departments. So I tried to group them in areas of emphasis. Community and economic development. You may recall last year, it was less than 50% staff for almost an entire year. We have become fully staffed. So that adds a new emphasis in this area. You've adopted the tax increment financing credit enhancement agreement guidelines. You now have a draft commercial kitchen design and operations plan, also something that had been stagnating. Inventoried all of the development parcels that we have available. Don't forget, we have a designated development site for the VA and our business enterprise park now. We've been working to revitalize the foreign trade zone. We've commenced the downtown parking study And we've done that in partnership with our village partnership initiatives. That was a work we were gonna undertake, but they already had a consultant on, so we just sort of added this additional task. Clearly, we've enhanced our downtown collaboration. We meet regularly, and obviously this year the council has gone ahead and got the start off of the Street Plus. And as I talk, I always remember things that are in process. So in process right now, we're gonna have to finalize our commercial and residential RFP. We also need to finalize our downtown TIF amendment. We do have the verbiage to do that. We need to finalize a commercial design and ops plan. We need to support the recreational economy for rural communities. I had to pull that one out. So that, that's gonna be one of the things that comes back in November with the new council. It's been a while since we talked about that. We got some federal money through the CVB, like a grant. And so there are some community partners who've been continuing that work. The next step of that work is rebranding and marketing. And so we have a number of staff people as well as community members who are part of that work. We need to continue to reinvigorate Ban Air and related property opportunities. We need to cultivate commercial development opportunities and implement the comprehensive plan. Do you want me to stop after each section?
There are comments or questions? I think we can keep
Okay.
going.
Homelessness, clearly we have failed our homelessness response manager position. We had funded daytime program options, both at the library and Hart. We've enacted emergency shelter zoning ordinance. We've continued to participate in statewide work to retool the system. We've made significant investment in community support through park rangers, BCAT and outreach. And we've established an encampment closure as a community priority. During this year, we had 1,200 diversions from homelessness, either through the provision of general assistance, a housing voucher, a hardship abatement, or a potential reunification option. We estimate that we made contact with about 250 unsheltered individuals. And we've had, I'm sorry, that's housed individuals. That's through our permanent supportive housing, and about 300 outreach contacts. We are going to complete the encampment closure work this year. And I think that will serve as a nice base to formulate a local homeless response plan. And we're gonna work to develop some comprehensive statistical data to try to get to, as you heard from Built for Zero, there virtually is no data, so you have to actually create it. So we'll work to do that. We're gonna continue to participate in the statewide conversations because it's important. We can have a local response, but if we are not supporting the statewide response, we're gonna continue to have dual systems, which is not helpful. I think the partner meeting last week was a great way to align and support our community resources, because there are a lot of them. And then continue to develop our best practices for what works for us here in our community.
I know those are under a separate heading for homelessness, but when you think about 1,200 people diverted from homelessness and 250 housed, to me, that falls under housing.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
great. Thank you.
Public health. We serve in a lot of ways as a regional public health department. So for example, we assist WIC participants in 2 counties, and we assisted nearly 4,500 participants through WIC. We provided some training, nutrition assistance training to just under 3,500 youth in our region related to nutrition assistance. We distributed just under 25,000 Narcan doses across 5 counties and had over 1,000 public health nurse home visits. We hired a public health director. We partnered for vaccination clinics for vulnerable people. We have played a role in the CDC Incident Command. We have begun the opioid settlement funding plan and worked to have a coordinated case management for the HIV cluster in our community. In the coming year, and the work that's still happening from public health, they play a role in supporting the encampment closure. They'll be coming back, later this fall, early into winter to finalize our opioid settlement funding strategy. We have asked, and we are gonna be supporting the CDC, who is gonna pull together the syringe service providers so that we can better assess and address syringe waste in our community. We're working to support the HIV response efforts with partners. We're gonna have a plan for mosquito-borne disease response in the coming year. And continue to get input from impacted populace to influence our infrastructure funding through the Maine Health Access Foundation, Maine Health Access Foundation. And continue to pursue the public health accreditation process.
When is that process expected to be completed?
No, I think I thought it was like a 3-year process, if I recall correctly.
Questions or comments on public health?
All right, public transportation, we are back up over 500,000 rides between public transit rides and ADA rides. We were at 550,000 for the last year. So that's a good uptick to see our ridership increasing. We have completed our triennial review. We have begun implementation of the fixed stop policy. The contract has been awarded for the design work for the bus storage facility. And we continue to emphasize training opportunities for folks. What we're working to find CDL training funding and partners. You may recall we had that conversation just recently at the GovOps meeting or somewhere we found out about some state funding, so we're hoping that will help. We need to update our advertising policy. We're going to implement our fixed route system entirely. Fingers crossed. Implement our technology upgrades. Update our bus shelter ordinance, and then longer term, it'll take a couple of years to address our bus storage facility capital project. And we continue to assess administrative and regulatory compliance. I will say that we're pretty darned excited, especially about the technology. The technology will be able to allow us, it'll provide a better experience for our passengers. On the flip side, inside the bus, it's gonna give us better information related to passengers. Because that data does help determine if you can qualify for additional capital funding. So you sort of get a base formula allotment, but if you can meet certain thresholds, you can be eligible for additional money. So we're hoping that that pays dividends in the future.
Questions or comments on public transportation? Okay,
All right, public safety. 35,500 police responses. I don't know what the 4,600 are welfare checks. Just under 4,700 welfare checks. We had 1,658 fire responses, 8,526 EMT responses, 1,235 BCAT responses. So for those who can say, well, what's BCAT doing? BCAT is taking 1,235 calls the police officers are not having to take. And we actually have 85 interactions with our overdose response team. So for example, if an individual comes through our public safety area as an overdose, because of HIPAA and privacy, we can't necessarily say, connect them to options, for example, which is an overdose response team. But what we can do is we can go out and walk with options and try to find the individuals and say, oh, Mary, this is Sue. Sue, this is Mary. And that's our way to kind of make those connections to individual whom we may have contacted that's overdosed. We've made significant strides in our staffing within police. We were able to negotiate a staff recruitment and retention plan within fire. Both police and fire facilities have had significant improvements. The fire department was awarded $200,000 in EMS Blue Ribbon funding. We are in the process of restoring our community enforcement team. So you may remember, so those of you who are newer counselors, you may never have heard of a community enforcement team. A community enforcement team was a team of police officers where we picked, a topic. So speed is sort of a thing that makes we hear a lot about it from our residents, we hear a lot about it in our neighborhoods. So they can pick a topic and these officers will focus on that one topic, whatever it may be. So we're actually to the point where we can bring that back. So that was a big win. We have finalized our mandatory Medicare reporting through the fire department. We partnered with Eastern Maine Community College. Again, this was us getting creative. If we can't get folks trained and certified through traditional methods, that we've gone ahead and invested with our own staff to be able to do that. So we did that to provide EMS training, and we've amended our loitering ordinance to address safety concerns. In the process, we need to finalize our reunification plan. We were going to work on that this past year. It just didn't get over the finish line. We're going to be working with Insurance Service Office. So I'm sure Realtor Fish understands what the ISO ratings are for our community. So it's working with them to lower the insurance, the ISO rating in our community. Upgrade radio infrastructure, and I clearly cut and paste is not my thing. We're gonna plan for the training center upgrades, obviously pending the outcome of the November 5th election, and then we're gonna continue to be creative, trying to identify solutions to address our critical staffing needs.
Counselor Trumbull.
This question on the, I mean, when you say 1,200 and something responses on BCAT, that's a lot that came off the police department. It seemed, I would have expected more from the BCAT.
So
But we have
we
staff
had some
a lot?
staff issues,
Okay.
yeah, and I believe we're still down one or
I think one.
one. I
Is
think
full
we're still down-
staffing four?
Four.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Yes, Counselor Fish.
Are some of the overdose responses maybe under certain circumstances? Could they also be in some of the other stats, like 35,500 police
Yes.
responders? 85 just
Yes.
seems low.
It is. So, for example, we have 5 police officers who are trained in this. And so if it's a police call where we've done a Narcan intervention, for example, depending on where the person is you may see that police officer out with the options team. And they'll be walking through trying to find the 1 or 2 people that they may have come in contact with. That's why it looks low. But yes, there are more overdoses likely in the police responses, and there's likely more overdoses in the EMS responses. This is the additional step where we follow up in conjunction with a community partner to try to make contact with the individual that was impacted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I feel that we should say, Counselor Schaefer here, 17.86 miles of streets and sidewalks, 2,750 under public services, 2,759 service requests fulfilled. So for those individuals who are watching or in our community, we do have a service request service that's available on our website. That part has actually been updated and transferred over to the new technology that's going to be rolling out as part of our website. But it does automatically route any concerns or issues directly to the department. So the fact that that's 2,800 people who didn't have to call, or items that staff didn't have to put in. So, and I will say that a lot of times, staff will even put them through this way so that way we know they're tracked. So that was a big win. We had 169 tree service requests fulfilled. Our fleet maintenance completed almost 1,500 service orders, and we acquired 38 vehicles. Treated 31 trees for brown-tail moth with Parks and Rec. Did a complete inventory of all of our trees, 2,500 trees. There's a lot it was a big tree year. We again you remember we started our CDL classes first with Public Works primarily, and we did get some transit drivers as well. But of the 2 CDL classes we've done in-house, We have 16 new employees who are still with us that came through that class. I think Public Works is maybe down one driver. And if you may remember 2 years ago, I think it was, we were down 18 plow drivers. So that's a huge win. Implemented partnerships with UTC and Bangor High School. You've seen some of the Bangor High School students come and give some presentations. Partnered with UMaine to develop an Emerald Ash Bar response, initiated the compost giveaway. Continued implementation of the asset management program, finalized the Penobscot corridor signal improvement, began development of a citywide lighting plan, and a lot of active engagement regarding the village partnership initiative. Coming up, we're going to implement a trial winter staffing schedule. So we've made some staffing changes at Public Works during the depths of winter to try to better manage the amount of hours that we are looking for our employees to sit in a truck plowing. So we're hopeful that's going to come to pay good dividends. We're also going to be developing our educational program to inform people about it's not good to put snow on our sidewalks if you're plowing. Developing an urban forest management plan, fully implement our asset management plan. We're going to complete Pickering Square. My understanding is they believe most of the hardscape will be done. It's the planting we'll have to come back and do in the spring. And clearly this time of year, you can't be planting. We're going to be looking to do a Broad Street Park improvement design. And the Ohio Street Bridge is going to be replaced in 2025. We're going to continue to support the Municipal Review Committee for our trash facility and continue stormwater monitoring.
I have a question on this one.
I can't imagine.
My favorites. The tree map, is that available yet?
I don't
haven't
know.
looked, but I've been also been checking the other maps are not updated yet either.
Yeah.
So, but I know that we, at that, and again, I just want to echo, I think that Public Works should be commended on their partnerships with UGC, BHS, UMaine, bring in some of the other schools and look in other departments to see where some of those connections can be made, because I think that's a really valuable connection for everyone.
Right. And I think we had several departments out at UTC because of that relationship that Public Works was able to start. Our first intern through UTC is now a full-time employee with us, and we have our second intern from UTC. So
that's amazing.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
The other thing too with the winter scheduling, is it going to impact? I know a lot of the folks that like to drive, plow and do those things appreciate the overtime and sometimes or maybe rely on the overtime. How is that going to impact their compensation?
So I think, how many hours was it, Courtney, that we could keep them in a truck before this change? Do you remember the plow? I mean, it was something ridiculous, like we could have them in a plow truck for 18 or.
Like we want them to be safe.
Correct.
Also, I want to make sure that it's.
Correct. It is something
their
that the employees agree to and they're
Okay.
pretty excited to do.
Then-
Because we could not do any of those things unilaterally.
Great.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything else on public services? Recreation.
Recreation, we had just under 6,400 program registrations. There was just over 37,000 rounds of golf played. We had over 191,000 waterfront concert attendees. We had just under 2,200 American Cruise Line passengers. We have 271 community garden beds, 321 event permits, and 45 harbor reservations. And remember that they do this generally, for the most part, with the seasonal staff. There's a handful of full-time employees who work through this, so they do a lot. It's
Do
a
we
busy
have-
time of year.
Any sense of whether the cruise line intends to return next year?
They do.
Excellent.
They do.
Okay.
I think they are looking at tweaking their schedules because at one point they have a ship that departs from here, but they have another ship that came up here on a stop, and at times they'd have both of their ships passing in the river. So I think they're going to be looking at changing up their schedule. I did hear that what they're really most appreciative of is that when there is bad weather and they need to get off the ocean, is that they know they can always come to us. So they appreciate the flexibility that we've offered in that way. We also have this year completed our facility feasibility study. The school committee has approved the use of the Griffin Road property for a future consolidated facility. We launched our mooring docks in the river this year. We completed our Cascade Park management plan, completed our waterfront walking trail plan that goes basically down to the 395 overpass, and we have revised our event permit and policy. This spring, we're gonna be installing the balance of 2 additional public restrooms, and I believe it gives us an opportunity based on, hopefully next year, we'll have a year under our belt and look at other opportunities. We have a significant amount of money set aside to do some Condescade Trail improvements, what we'd like to do. Parks and Rec is also a participant in the rural economy, recreational economy for rural communities work for the branding and marketing. We are gonna need to continue. It does look like we may get 1 more year out of our transition plan with Mansfield. But Mansfield is maintained by a group of volunteers in the West Side Little League. And the folks who are kind of at the core of that are likely transitioning away. So we're gonna have to look at what that looks like. And then obviously next steps for this facility replacement. Good, all right. Water quality. So 3.3 billion gallons of water is treated through our facility. We have 30 miles of sewer lines that have been cleaned this year. We've inspected 28.4 miles of sewer lines. And I believe we're required to inspect.
That's way
Like
above the required amount.
Correct, because it's like a tenth of what? We're only required to do a tenth of our system every year. But we've done quite a bit more. That crew is now fully staffed as well, so. And we did 447 sewer manhole inspections. We also completed the second phase of our SCADA project, and our SCADA is Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System. And basically, it gathers and analyzes and provides real-time data throughout our system, flow data, chemicals, etc. We have met with Herman and Hannon in advance of our interlocal agreement. So when the treatment plant was built in that it was upgraded in the mid to late 90s. Both Herman and Hamden came in and bought a portion of that. So that interlocal agreement is going to be set to expire in 2026. There were things that were much different 30 years ago when that agreement was signed. So there were some updates and changes. So that staff has been working to kind of bring folks up to date there. We completed $1.3 million in small project work, and that basically are the defects and concerns that we note as part of our inspections and cleanings. It gives us the opportunity to address them. We should have in the next couple of months the evaluation back to you for the evaluation of the Kmart and Perry Road pump stations. They have participated in a nationwide study of community pathogens. They've got their discharge permit with Maine DEP renewed. And we've been trying to get some concrete repairs done at the plant for some time, and we've actually gotten those finished this year. So we're gonna finalize our pump station upgrade scope and timeline. That should be over hopefully by the end of the year. Then we're gonna move into phase 3 of our SCADA project. We are gonna also participate in a biosolids drying and disposal study. We're gonna undertake a plant and sewer capacity study. And 3 of the more significant projects that we're gonna be looking at are what's referred to as Barkersville, and off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you where Barkersville is. Meadowbrook, which is actually right here, it is the Hill. And Roundel Street projects.
Are we gonna continue our participation in the community pathogens?
I believe so.
Excellent.
I think people like it.
It's really helpful. You can go, like, if someone's sick and say, well, it's probably flu or COVID, because that's what we have right now, and it's probably not these 4 things. That's interesting to see. Great, thank you. Airport.
So airport, 707,000 passengers, 8 record-breaking months. 13.3 million gallons of fuel sold. Last year, we transitioned over to taking over some of the fueling operations from the Guard. And when we did that, I think last year we got some sort of media inquiry about how we became one of the top 10 defense contractors in the state. All of a sudden, we showed up on a list. And it was because of the amount of military fuel that we sell. And about just under 25,000 operations. We have begun our multi-year. Oh, I should have hired. We hired an airport director during this time too. I don't know if we took credit for that last year. We might have taken credit for that. He just hadn't started yet. We began the multi-year runway construction project. We began the terminal connector project. We have our 800 space surface lot expansion underway, and welcomed Breeze Airways that added 3 new destinations to the offerings here at BGR. What we're going to be doing in the coming months is implementing our common use technology, the airline counters. We're going to be going out for RFQ for engineering services. We're going to be completing our runway reconstruction and working to complete our terminal connector project over the next couple of years. Identify funding for our TSA checkpoint redesign. We really want to redesign that second floor. We did not advance for the ATP grant money the council had authorized us to apply for. And hopefully we're going to finally get our World War II alert building removed. We were successful in getting some brownfields grant money to do that.
Yes.
Didn't we finalize the school?
School's been open. Oh, I didn't add
this
it.
past
Yeah,
year?
The flight school.
the flights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
It's always big.
Yeah,
I remember that months ago, somewhere in the foggy, misty memory.
this is good because I'll make notes. We can update it before we post it to the website and get it out. Yeah.
Excellent.
Cross Insurance Center. Welcomed 190,000 patrons, 86 arena events, 141 convention center events. We did a redesign and refinishing of the basketball court with significant growth in our corporate partnerships. Continued improvements to the Bangor State Fair. And it's hard to believe that we continue to maintain the building because yes, it's 10 years old and it shows wear and tear. And I don't know, it just seems like it got here in a hurry. Coming up, we're going to continue to refine convention booking process. We have the return of the Broadway series. They are going to be introducing a sponsored ballroom series and continued reinvestment in the building and opportunity. They're going to continue to expand event offerings of all types. And what I think you've seen in the last couple of years is there's a great variety of events that are taking place now. So it doesn't fall into 1 or 2, 3 categories or buckets. I think it's far more broad, with the field out.
And last page.
Last page is sort of citywide initiatives and operations. We relocated city hall functions. We've launched the 2-year citywide revaluation process. I think I've got that. See, I've got that in there twice. We've updated our event permit policy and ordinance. We've addressed loitering safety concerns, which is in another place. We finalized our regional climate action plan, completed our Parks and Rec feasibility stand, completed our forest management, completed Cascade Park management, finalized our ARPA application, appointed an ADA coordinator. We are going to be following up with our ARPA beneficiaries this fall. I think over the winter, we should consider doing our operating policies and guidelines. We've taken a couple of stabs, and I'd like to hopefully bring it home this year. We'll have our calendar year reporting for ARPA recipients. We're going to continue to build our relationships with our school committees, county, state, federal elected officials as well. From a public engagement standpoint, as a council, you have accepted just over 1,500 public comments, either in person or via email. So, and that's just the general email. I'm sure you had lots of other public comments that don't
About the
come,
private comments.
correct, that don't come through us.
There've been a few of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you had 281 public meetings, and that is council committee, citizen appointed committee, and that meetings such as that. 258 orders, ordinance, and resolves. I think we have increased our social media engagement quite a bit. We revived our LinkedIn presence. We transitioned to YouTube for live streaming. We're gonna continue to improve our communication strategy. And we've done a considerable amount of public outreach, both from our comp plan, our village partnership initiative, our CDBG plan, et cetera. We actually did public outreach related to the Grandview before the rezoning and all of that. So I think they've done quite a bit that way. Next step, launch of the new website. We expect that out in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna continue to improve our strategy with communicating and continue to digitize our documents so that they're easily accessible by the public. From an HR perspective, we started providing this last year, separations by fiscal year, as well as the number of positions and vacancies. The existing programs remain pretty much as they were last year. We offer a full range of benefits and supports for individuals. Completed this year, we've gotten through 4 collective bargaining agreements this year, so that was a win. So even in this, you can see that we have, overall citywide, we have about a 6.29% vacancy. Last year, it was 10.23. So we've made great strides in somewhere, and we know we're still doing some work in some other areas, so we're working through that. We did our in-house CDL and EMS training and licensing. That was pretty substantial for us. We are going to be doing an intranet for employee access only. That actually rolls out as part of the website. We are continuing to revise our personnel rules and regulations. We are planning for the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, and we're going to continue to explore ways to provide more flexibility, support a work-life balance for our employees. So.
I'm tired.
See, you're tired
Is
for
that
good
it?
reasons. What do you mean, is that it?
Council Fournier.
So, yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very much. The, as we go into our goal setting.
Yeah.
For next year, those numbers that you have, like for public health and transportation, public safety
Yeah.
and all that, could you do a 5-year?
Of
So you
the,
can see trends?
data under each section?
Yeah,
Okay, I think we've only been doing it for the 3 years, I think.
well then,
How
for
about
3.
that? Okay,
That'd be
yes, yes.
I think that just helps
Yeah.
us. Thank you.
Other comments or questions on the year in review?
Just a comment. Thank you so much. I'm comforted to see this and I want people to see this as well.
correct.
I mean, there was a lot of work done, but people don't see it.
That's correct.
I mean, people have sometimes complained, they have questions, inquiries, but it's not like staff is not doing anything or counselors are not doing anything. We're not addressing the problems. This is a proof that we have done a lot and
Mhm.
there is a lot in progress and to be done as well.
That's,
Thank you.
there will always be something to do. Yes.
Any other manager updates?
The only other manager updates, I just want to kind of toss out, we're in this weird session here, so I'm gonna hopefully be looking, so we'll have sort of the council orientation meeting, but then we'll also have to have a goal setting session. So right now, I'm hoping, because we don't have meetings on Monday, they typically move to Wednesdays. So I'll send out, but I'm hoping to hold Wednesday, November 20th for sort of the first meeting. At that time, once you all elect a council chair on the 13th, then I'll work with the council chair for the next goal setting session. So just be thinking about keeping your Wednesdays for us so we can slide in and get started on the next year. Now that you've done all this work, you can take a breath for like a week and a half and we'll come back and do another year. Except for, Councilor Yakabaga and shit. But you'll root us on for afar.
from far.
The 13th is a Wednesday, but is there,
Pardon
the 13th is a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why we're not meeting on the 11th?
The 11th is Veterans Day?
Oh, that's.
Yeah, I had the same
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same.
You're the
moment.
one that should be.
Exactly.
Don't
I
I think you just wanted to bring it up.
No, it's important to bring up Veterans Day.
Okay, I think we're set. We are adjourned. Council will be